mindful of truth ever exceeding our knowledge, love greater than we know, and solidarity exceeding our practice. Reverently, we gather for worship, beginning with ourselves as we are, to share the strengths of integrity and the heritage of the Spirit, that we may know more truth, love more freely and fully, and live in the solidarity that strengthens each of us and through which we transform the world. I'm the Reverend Anthony Johnson, and I welcome you to this virtual worship service of the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. Although we cannot meet in the church building, there is a full schedule of programs and activities. Every Sunday, there's a live virtual coffee hour following the service from 11:30 a.m. until 1 p.m. Religious education for children begins this Sunday online at 10 a.m., and all registered families should have received an email about that. Please read news you can use and other emails you receive from the church, and please check the website regularly for updates. Please send your joy or sorrow via the link in the email you received and indicate whether you give permission for it to be read in the next week's service. If you are a visitor or newcomer, I invite you to explore the website uchbg.org to learn more about the church and its many activities. Whoever you are, wherever you live, whomever you love, whatever you do for a living, you are welcome at the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. While the building may be closed, the church is open.
Hello, I'm Teresa Albarisi, and I'm your lay liturgist for today's service. I invite those of you at home to light a candle, a chalice, or whatever you choose to serve as your chalice at home. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light the beacon of hope, a sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Please join me in the reading of the unison affirmation. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is our gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to speak our truths in love, and to help one another.
And to rejoice and come in, and to rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day, and to rejoice and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day, and to rejoice and come in. Open your hearts. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day, and to rejoice and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day, and to rejoice and come in. 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 Today will be a joyful day, and to rejoice and come in.
Hello and welcome. My name is Corey, and I serve as your Director of Religious Exploration. Today's story is titled All Are Welcome by Alexandra Penfold and illustrated by Suzanne Kaufman. In this story, we will follow a group of children through a day in their school where everyone is welcomed with open arms. A school where kids in their pakas, hijabs, and yarmulkes play side by side with friends in baseball caps. A school where students grow and learn from each other's traditions and their whole community gathers to celebrate the Lunar New Year. All are welcome lets young children know that no matter what, they have a special place. They have a space. They are welcome in their school as well as our church, a place where diversity is celebrated with songs, stories, talents, and traditions. Let's begin our story. Pencils sharpened in their case, bells are ringing, let's make haste. School's beginning, dreams to chase, all are welcome here. No matter how you start your day, what you wear when you play, or if you come from far away, all are welcome here. In our classroom safe and sound, fears are lost and hope is found. Raise your hand, we'll go around. All are welcome here. Gather now, let's all take part. We'll play music, we'll make art. We'll share stories from the heart. All are welcome here. Time for lunch, what a spread! A dozen different kinds of bread. Pass it around till everyone's fed. All are welcome here. We're part of a community. Our strength is our diversity, a shelter from adversity. All are welcome here. We will learn from each other, special chance we'll uncover. There's a big world to discover. All are welcome here. So much to learn, so much to do, and when the busy day is through, can't wait to come back, start anew. All are welcome here. Head for home, get some rest, and greet tomorrow, ready and fresh. Our time together is best. All are welcome here. You have a place here. You have a space here. All are welcome here.
Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our circle, draw the circle wide.
Many, many years ago, I was a pre-med major at Cabrini College, a small liberal Catholic college outside of Philadelphia. It was run by the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart, affectionately known as the Cabrini Sisters. While I was there, I found out that these sisters had missions throughout the world, but they weren't the type of missions that we mostly think about. They weren't there to convert anyone. These missions provided medical treatment and education. By the time I was a senior, I wasn't sure I wanted to be a doctor, and I asked if I could go work on a mission. Thankfully, they said yes. I was to be assigned and to volunteer at St. Mary's in Swaziland, which is now known as Eswatini. Swaziland was a small country in the southern eastern part of Africa, mostly surrounded by South Africa. I was very excited. I was raised a liberal Catholic, and I was raised to help people. So not only would I be able to help people on this mission, I would also learn more about medicine, and I would go on a great adventure. So I graduated in May of 1976, and by August, I was on my way to Africa. Now, this was a long time ago and before computers, so when I went to Swaziland, I was really isolated from my family and friends. It also was, there was still apartheid in South Africa, and while I was there, I hitchhiked through South Africa, but that's a totally different story. And of course, I never told my parents about hitchhiking until I came home. I could spend hours telling you about my exciting lessons I learned and adventures in Africa, but I'm not. I'm going to limit myself to 2 stories, both of which provided lifelong lessons for me. Story number 1. When I arrived in Swaziland and was on the mission at St. Mary's, we discovered that they needed another teacher before school started. They needed a teacher for world history, so they asked if I would do that. I was hired by the Swazi government to teach world history to Form 1, which is around 9th grade in our country. Now, fortunately, by the time the students are in Form 1, they can speak English very well. However, most of them had never seen even electricity before they came to our school. They hadn't seen oceans or maps or boats and everything. And the first 2 topics I had to teach was about the Middle Ages with knights and castles, and then later the demise of the Spanish Armada when it tried to invade England. This was totally foreign to these students and was difficult to teach, so I had to be really creative. I thought I had succeeded, but after the first unit, I gave them a test. And I had the highest grade was 60 out of 50 students. Most of my students had between 30 and 40. I was devastated. I thought, I am not doing a very good job teaching if these students are getting 30s and 40s in my test. So I went to the more experienced teachers in the school and said, what am I doing wrong? How can I better teach these students? And they said, you should be happy. All your students passed your first test. 30% is passing. Well, I was stunned. And I was not happy. 30% passing? Who decided this? And then I realized that even though the school was run by the Swazi government, the system was in place by colonial England. So people didn't think that kids in Africa could learn more than 30%. So perhaps they thought they were being kind, but not really. I thought it was really patronizing. So I went to my students and I said, I think you could learn more than this. And I drew them a circle on the board and I said, this is how much I'm teaching, all this information. But you only need to know one part of this information. And I colored in 1/3 of the circle. And I said, is this what you want? I think you can do better. And all the students said, yes, we do want to do better. And after that, they did. In fact, most of the students got above 70% when I gave a test. I mean, this was 9th grade, so some kids did more work than others, just like all kids in the world will do. So that was my first lesson. People thought they were being kind. I'm not sure that was being kind or helpful. It certainly wasn't treating the children with respect and dignity. It was assuming that they could not achieve. And the purpose of education is to help students achieve success to the best of their ability. So that was a good lesson for dignity and respect. story number 2. Because I was a teacher, I got to live in dormitory housing on the school grounds, and it really was just one-story building. Each teacher had 2 rooms. One room was a kitchen and one room was a bedroom. Bathroom facilities were shared by the entire mission. But the more important thing about being a teacher was the fact that the Swazi government hired me and they would be paying me in cash, which is, cash is hard to come by in a mission in Africa at that time, especially. One of the women I had gotten to know pretty well from the neighboring village was named Della Rosa, and she came to me and said, would you let me do your laundry and then you could pay me in cash? And I politely said I would think about it. But inside, I was so upset. I was appalled. Who am I to have a maid? I didn't come to Africa to have a maid. How dare I assume that I could have a maid like that? That's just terrible. So I went to the head of the mission, and Sister Raphael, who was head of the medical clinic as well. She was only in her 30s. I thought she was much older because I was 21. She was incredibly wise. And I told her about Della Rosa, and she said, well, you know Della Rosa. She works part-time in the clinic, but she's raising a daughter all on her own and could really use the extra cash to help better her life for herself and her daughter. So stop thinking about yourself and give her the opportunity to get ahead. Boy, that gave me a lot to think about. I had never looked at it that way. So I met with Della Rosa and we came to an agreement. She would do my sheets and I would pay her, but also she would help me learn Siswati and I would help her learn to improve her English. So again, another lesson in respect and dignity. Well, I was raised a liberal Catholic by parents who were incredibly wonderful. And I was lucky enough that they treated everyone with respect and dignity and taught us to value every person. So it seems like these lessons, even though I was Catholic at the time, it seems like these lessons really were preparing me to become a Unitarian. 20 years later, I was looking for a church in Harrisburg, and my friend Jane Bechtel suggested I check the Unitarian Universalist Church of Harrisburg out, and I did. And I found that I really loved it. After all, the first 3 principles are everything that I believed in and learned about. Respecting dignity for one another, valuing each person, treating people with compassion and equally. So I never did become a doctor. Instead, I went back to school and got a degree in ecology, which I loved, and I ended up teaching about the environment for the rest of my career, and I still care about the environment. But those years in Africa and the teachings of my parents have always stayed with me and helped me find this church community. I am so happy to have found you and my church community in Harrisburg.
Today in this congregation, someone is hurting or in sorrow. Today in this congregation, someone is anxious because of events in the world. Today in this congregation, someone is lonely. Today in this congregation, someone is filled with joy and wants to celebrate. For all the fear and sorrow in the world today, there are still moments of joy. Whether or not we speak the names of those who have joys and sorrows, we extend our words of love and trust to all, for all carry joy and all carry sorrow. We send love for those whose names have been spoken or not spoken, and love for those who hear. Trust in the acceptance of this community and trust in the continuity of life. When there is birth, life goes on. When there is death, life goes on. When there is joy, life goes on. When there is sorrow, life goes on. May we always live in trust and in love, that all joy may be shared and all sorrow comforted. Amen. Blessed be. In a mission-driven church, every action, every decision, every practice is in line with the mission. The mission states what the church exists to do in the world. The current mission of the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg was adopted by the congregation on May 17, 2020, following a long process of discernment. The process began 2 years ago with the development of a vision. Many of you participated in the visioning process. 1 year ago, the vision was completed and adopted, and then you began the process of developing the mission. The drafting of the mission was done by mid-February, and after discussion and addressing some suggested changes, the final draft was voted on by the congregation on May 17, 2020. It was adopted, thus concluding the missioning process. Please note that I refer to the mission and not to the mission statement. A mission statement only describes the mission. The mission itself, is lived by the congregation, and although it can be summarized in words, the statement composed by and in those words is a representation of the reality of the mission. The mission is more than the words that are used to state it. In a mission-driven church, every action, decision, and practice derives from or supports the mission. Today, I begin a series of 3 sermons looking at the mission of the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. Please hear again the mission you adopted. The Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is an inclusive community of faith committed to welcoming and nurturing all with dignity and respect. We make a difference by encouraging lifelong spiritual exploration, equipping individuals for service, and empowering them to act for justice in the world. Today's sermon focuses on the first sentence of the mission. The Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is an inclusive community of faith committed to welcoming and nurturing all with dignity and respect. So what is an inclusive community of faith? To start, the word community has many meanings. It can be descriptive of a population that lives in proximity to one another. Or one could speak of the Harrisburg community and mean this cluster of municipalities of many names that share Harrisburg addresses and constitute a metropolitan area centered on the city of Harrisburg. We could speak more broadly of a national community, or even of a global community, all based on significant commonalities or concerns. But today we mean something smaller and more intentional. We mean a group of people with shared interests, values, beliefs, broadly and loosely, though not carelessly defined, and ethos. These shared interests, values, beliefs, and ethos are characteristics of a faith. The people organize themselves to live the faith they share. A community is not a random collective, but an ongoing group of people in ongoing relationship based upon their interests, their values, their beliefs, and their ethos. That is, it is based upon their shared faith. Now, faith is not a set of beliefs, although faith may include beliefs. Faith is larger than any belief or set of beliefs. It is, in the words of my colleague Scotty McLennan, and I quote, an orientation of the whole personality. It's not just belief, the holding of certain ideas, but it's much larger. It is the ability to experience the universe as meaningful. Having faith means that our lives hold together and make sense at a deep level, rather than seeming ultimately awry, askew, or absurd. End of quote. Faith may involve a belief in God, or it may not. Faith involves values such as we articulate in the Unitarian Universalist principles and purposes. Faith also involves practices and rituals, such as this Sunday worship. Now, what we mean by inclusive is this. We include everyone who wants to be included, whether or not they have been historically excluded from another church in this or another faith tradition. In the words of Sylvia Ann Hewlett, this is where, quote, individuals are comfortable being themselves, unquote. Clarence Russell Skinner, a prominent Universalist theologian and church leader during the first half of the 20th century, spoke of the church as the universal community. By this he meant a church would include all who lived in an area or a city. It would include all by offering different forms of learning and worship to different segments of the community. It would include and actively serve mystics and theists and humanists with a variety of Sunday meetings or worship, of educational programs, and of projects serving the members and the geographical community and beyond. In this latter sense of beyond, the church of the universal community would not be geographically limited. An inclusive community of faith includes people of varied social, economic, and educational backgrounds and of differing beliefs. But the members of the community share a faith defined by interests, values, beliefs, and ethos. So what does it mean to welcome and nurture all? I have just addressed the meaning of that little word, all. But it is sometimes unclear who the all will be in this or another situation or community. The first sermon I delivered to this congregation a little more than 2 years ago was titled, "The Doors of the Church Are Open." In realistic and practical terms, all describes anyone and everyone who walks through the doors. Or, in today's virtual worship, anyone and everyone who watches this screen. Welcome means to invite persons in and to greet them with open arms. Whoever you are, wherever you live, whomever you love, whatever you do for a living, you are welcome at the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. We say that every Sunday, and we mean it. But welcoming is a bigger than positive response. It is bigger than just a positive response to those who come into the church, whether in physical space or cyberspace. It is extending the welcome by way of invitation to those whom we do not yet know or who may or may not have heard of us and have not yet visited or met us. At the time when we had to shut down the building in March because of COVID-19, several of you and I were working out plans to extend the welcome of the church actively into the city and other locations at a remove from the building on Clover Lane. Be assured that when it is safe to do so, we will actively extend the welcome in physical space. But for now, we must focus on virtual space. Nurturing means that the church serves individuals who are neither fully formed nor fully independent. We expect to hear newcomers to this or another Unitarian Universalist church to declare that they developed beliefs or an identity that did not fit in the church of their origin or was not supported in other settings in their lives. Individuals who grow up in a Unitarian Universalist congregation have been encouraged from childhood to explore. They expect the church to be a place of nurture for them as they keep growing their faith. More and more, churches are welcoming young people who are not raised in any religious tradition or have any identification with the faith community. Unlike many young people of earlier generations, they are less rejecting something and more looking for something they've never known. The all whom we welcome are a diverse lot, but they are not everybody. They are the ones who find this church, or whom this church finds, when it goes out from its existing congregation and physical location to meet other people in other places perhaps less comfortable than those we are accustomed to. What does it mean to be this community and to welcome and nurture all with dignity and respect? What we mean by dignity is this, that a person is worthy of honor or esteem without any limitation. You do not earn dignity. Dignity is your human right. Whatever you do not do, whoever you are. And what we mean by respect, treating a person as worthy of esteem. Doing this begins with basic manners, but is more, much more than basic manners. It starts with common courtesy, and it goes farther and deeper than common courtesy. The philosopher Avishai Margalit developed the concept of the decent society in a book with that title, and talking about what he means by a decent society will help us here. A decent society is one in which the society's institutions do not humiliate its citizens, and its citizens do not humiliate each other. It is not necessarily a society that is just in all ways. It is a society that does not humiliate its citizens. Put another way, it treats them with dignity and respect. This is the minimal base upon which to build a society of greater justice and equity. The society in which we live, our American society, is not a decent society. Although some of its institutions and many of its citizens are decent, many persons are humiliated by institutions and by fellow citizens. This has long been the case. However, under the current regime, humiliation is not seen so much as a negative, but as a tool of legitimate power. Even without Margalit's naming of the destructiveness of humiliation, most of us with any conscience or consciousness get it. This is one factor in two public phenomena over the past 6 or 7 months. First, there is the huge number of demonstrations against police brutality that began in the spring. There have always been demonstrations when an unarmed black adult or child has been murdered by the police. But the murders seem to have become more frequent, or maybe harder to hide, or maybe better reported by the media. People of color are sick and tired of being humiliated by the police. This is an everyday occurrence in many communities of color in the United States, especially black communities. I'll return to this point in next week's sermon on policing and public health. The second phenomenon is the recognition by white people of the truth of the claims of African Americans that they are targets of the structural racism that is the heart of America's history and culture. Yes, there have always been white people who have recognized this, but there has been a significant increase in the number of people who now do and articulate their agreement with these concerns. There are institutions in the United States and in American society that are decent. Many, though not all, religious communities are decent. But the church, this church, needs to be more than decent. It must do more than avoid humiliating people. It must actively respect people. It must actively promote and protect and even enhance the dignity of all persons. This is how it nurtures those who are or would be part of the religious community. This is also an aspect of doing service and acting for justice in the world, which will be the focus of the third and final sermon in this series. But for now, here are some ways in which we can welcome and nurture all within the religious community. Examples of how we nurture with dignity and respect. Examples of how we are inclusive. We do not make assumptions about individual beliefs that people may have. We honor the work a person does for a living, whether skilled or unskilled, white collar or blue collar, well paid or poorly paid. We equally honor a person who does not or cannot work. When a youth bridges and graduates from high school, we ask, what are your plans for the time after high school? Not, where are you going to college? We accept that persons come from different backgrounds, and therefore we do not rank them because of their backgrounds. We do not make assumptions about their religion because of their race. A history of making such assumptions in the past is one reason why there are fewer people of color in Unitarian Universalist congregations than there might otherwise be. These are some of the ways in which we welcome and nurture all, and these are just a few. You, the people of the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg, have taken up a meaningful and powerful mission. It is a challenge to live it to its fullest. But I know you can make real the promise of the first sentence. The Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is an inclusive community of faith committed to welcoming and nurturing all with dignity and respect. This sentence is part fact and part aspiration. May you so live as a church to make it more fact than aspiration. Today, tomorrow, and in the years ahead, blessed be. Amen.
Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing
Even as we are separated and sitting in our own homes today, the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is nevertheless a freely gathered church of free people. The church is created, sustained, and supported by us, the people. The church is open even when the building is closed. Each week, we share the offering with a community organization. During the month of September, the recipient is the Unitarian Universalist Pennsylvania Advocacy Legislative Ministry, or UUPOM. The Unitarian Universalist Pennsylvania Advocacy Legislative Ministry is a 501c3 organization that works with partners to provide analysis on issues of economic, immigration, and environmental justice in Pennsylvania. UUPOM educates opinion leaders, policymakers, UU congregations, and the public about issues that matter to UU values in Pennsylvania. UUPOM also works on leadership development with an emphasis on linking UU values and spiritual development to our advocacy. UUPOM is the educational arm of the UU Pennsylvania Legislative Advocacy Network, or UU Plan. There is a link for contributing to today's plate collection in the video description below. You may have to click the words "Show me more" to see it. The same link is in the email that went out to members this morning. Your financial support and commitment matter. Please be generous. Thank you.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land, by every tongue.
I ask you to consider these two questions. What makes you feel welcome in a religious community? I repeat, what makes you feel welcome in a religious community? The second question, what can or what does a religious community do to help you nurture your own faith? Consider these questions whether you are a member, a longtime friend, or a first-time visitor today. If you're already part of the church, you can send me an email at my office email. And if you're a visitor and would like to share your answers to these questions, go to our website, uchbg.org, and go to where it says Contact Us, Minister and Staff, and you can send me a message through that link. I would love to hear from you. So what makes you feel welcome in a religious community? And what can a religious community do to help you nurture your faith? Please think on these things.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise fulfillment, and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
Go your own ways, knowing not the answers to all things, yet seeking always the answer to one more thing than you know. Amen. Blessed be.